Ladies and gentlemen, today on the Locked On Blues podcast, the St. Louis Blues have slayed the dragon that initially started this pretty awful losing streak that the Blues found themselves in. The offense was nowhere to be found. All started with the loss to the New York Rangers. Well, tonight, not only did they beat the New York Rangers, not only did they put up 6 goals against the New York Rangers, they chased Vezina winner, most likely, Hart winner potentially, Igor Shesterkin, for the first time all season. Reliable Rangers source Andrew Chalmley tells me he has yet to be chased this season, or maybe one other time. So we're just going to call it his first time. The Blues are the only team to do it this year. Offense is back. Maybe. Got a lot to talk about. Make sure you stay tuned.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Locked On Blues podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and your number one source for daily Blues content. I'm Josh Hyman, and I am joined by my very relieved co-host, Thomas Welch. And the reason he's relieved is because the St. Louis Blues finally won a game. Lost 4 straight, including one to the team they beat tonight, the New York Rangers. Huge statement when the team that, like I said, started the downfall for the St. Louis Blues came out and whooped them. Put up 6 goals, chased Igor Shesterkin, a lot to like. Thomas had 2 goals, Kyrou had 2 assists, David Perron had a goal, Jake Wallman had a goal, Robert Bortuzzo had assists. We got a lot to talk about. But first, thanks to anyone and everyone out there for making Locked On Blues your first listen, making us part of your daily routine, because we're free and available on all podcast platforms. All right, Tommy, I don't even know where to start. Game just ended. Blues put up 6 goals. Where do you want to start? Where should we begin this story?
We have to begin the story with the offense, because the offense has been non-existent for the past 4 games. We talked about how this team needs to support each other. This team needs to win 2 out of the 3 areas of the ice, and they absolutely did that in the goaltending, because Ville Husso played out of his freaking mind, making some 10-bell saves all night long, multiple of them. If it wasn't for him, it probably would have been a 6-5 game, in all honesty. And the offense showed up and made life a living hell for Igor Shesterkin, like you said. And I tweeted this out earlier during the game, but the Blues scored 3 goals on 3 shots against Shesterkin last week in their loss. And so after they put the second one in, I was like, hey, keep the pressure on them, because it seems like either the team kind of buckles after a goal, or Shesterkin just gets a little loose. And lo and behold, they did the same thing, scored like 3 goals in, I think, 2 minutes tonight. And lo and behold, that was all it took to win, because the Rangers only scored 2. But I think at the end of the day, we talk about how much this offense means to this team. And the offense was the main reason that the Blues came away victorious in this. I mean, they were controlling the game the entire game long. Robert Thomas was just playing out of his mind, setting up anybody and everybody he could for assists, but he ended up with no assists on the night and potting 2 of them himself. That first goal, I think, touched 7 sticks in the span of 3 seconds on its way to the net. Just brilliant passing from the Blues' high-powered offense that, like I said, they've relied on all season long, went stagnant for the last 4 games. Now it's back. You can make the argument, I think you're trying to make the argument, Josh, that is the offense back, or is this just a 1 game off where we're going to go see them struggle again against the Nashville Predators? I think they're back. I think they got their mojo. They got their swagger back, and they look like the confident Blues and the confident offense that we saw earlier this season.
Yeah, I mean, amongst their losing streak, they scored 7 goals over 4 games. And then tonight, they scored 6 goals in 3 periods. And I don't think I'm trying to make the argument, per se.
Ask the question.
Yeah. Like, I'm not like, everyone's like, oh, let's go, Blues offense is back. And I'm like, I hope so.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
I hope so. But, you know, this is the same offense that we watched struggle over that 4-game stretch. It's the same players, the same scheme, the same, whatever. So, like, I would love more than anything for this to be the new norm. If the Blues are just going to start playing like they did at the beginning of the season again, that would be spectacular. But at the same time, I'm a little hesitant to jump all in back in on the Blues offense as a wagon. This team can beat anyone train, because I got to see it over, let's call it 4 games. They stunk it up for 4 games. So over these next 3-4 games, if they can be consistently strong offensively, then I'll have no way to argue against the Blues and against their offense. But yeah, lots to talk about tonight. I mean, I think second segment we should get into some of the more individual performances. But overall, like as a team, what worked for the Blues? The passing was phenomenal, which was definitely the biggest struggle for the Blues in their losing streak, was the passing. And tonight was one of their better passing games of the season. Like you said, they look like the Harlem Globetrotters out there on Robert Thomas's first goal, like trying to watch the game, like head whipping back and forth. The puck was zipping around the ice. Needed that Fox Sports puck trail from a couple years ago to follow that one.
I think one of the biggest things too for this Blues team, they always play whenever they play most successful. And when we saw their best in the playoffs, they play with grit. They play with an edge. They grinded in the dirty areas of the ice, and I feel like we hadn't seen that in this 4-game skid and losing 4 games straight. 30 seconds into the game, David Perron, I think the first shot of the game was a backhander from the blue line. Shesterkin comes in, gloves it, and Perron follows up his shot and starts mucking it up with the boys in front. We almost get a fight right off the rip. I think that set the tone for the entire team. I think it established that, hey, we're not going to win this one easy, trying to be sexy, trying to make highlight reel goals, even though they ended up making them anyways. But it's the steps to get there that we talked about, and winning the puck battles in the corners and winning the board battles and all those things. You have to put in the work to get to the goal. And I think the boys realized that tonight at the time of recording against the Rangers.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime you win 6-2, there's going to be a lot of guys that show up on the score sheet, a lot of guys that contribute, and a lot of guys that don't show up on the score sheet and still contribute. 6-2 against a team like the New York Rangers is an all-around, extremely strong performance. I think it was an all-around performance. I don't think the defense was bailed out by the offense in this game. I think the Blues just maybe dominated in every aspect of the game. It's been a while since I felt like we've been able to say that. But it's nice to see. So in the second segment, we're going to get into a couple of those individual performances. Some of the guys that did show up on the score sheet, the Jordan Kyrous, the Robert Thomases of the world. But then, there are a couple other guys that maybe necessarily flew under the radar tonight, but also had some pretty strong games. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But first, I want to tell you guys about our good friends over at BetOnline. Now, if you're like Tommy, maybe, and you think the Blues offense is back, and you're not waiting it out like me, maybe you want to bet the over for Saturday's afternoon game. Whatever you want to do, it's that time of year to play some bets, because college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. March Madness, baby. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It is not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts, and we'll be right back. All right, Tommy. So, in terms of the individual performances in tonight's game, we probably should start with the guys like I said, showed up on the score sheet. And let's talk about the guy that showed up on the score sheet more than anyone else, at least in terms of the goal column, and that is Robert Thomas. Been kind of on fire lately. Up to 10 goals in the season, maybe 11. I'm not sure if the 10th goal was his first or his second of the night.
I think he's at 10.
Okay.
I think
so 10 goals on the season 10. For Robert Thomas. But he scored a majority of them, lately in the past few weeks. Kind of turned his game around a little bit. Like you said, no assists for him tonight, which is usually when you have.
He could have had plenty of them,
right?
Yeah.
Right. Usually in a game where Robert Thomas has no assists, you're like, oh man, Robert Thomas didn't play his best tonight. But nope, here he is with 2 goals. So let's combine this one. Thomas 2 assists, or 2 goals. Sorry, Kyrou 2 assists. Sort of a flip flop of their usual roles. What did you see out of the 2 young stars for the St. Louis Blues?
Oh, I think we're really seeing Robert Thomas come into his own as a player in the NHL, because this that we're seeing right now is extremely similar to the level of Robert Thomas that dominated the OHL with the London Knights. And I mean, the dude is just playing brilliant hockey in every facet. He's winning faceoffs. He's playing good defense. He's back checking. He's protecting the puck in the offensive zone. He's winning board battles. He's grinding out pucks. He's making just absurd passes like he always does. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he led the team in shots on goal tonight. And so for everyone that's saying, well, we wish Robert Thomas would shoot the puck more, he did. And so this last stretch of games where he's been heating it up with the goal production, especially, we've gotten a lot of like goals for him that are still set up by his passing, right? It's like a sauce over the stick of the defenseman, takes him out of the play. The puck comes right back to him. It's a tap in on the doorstep, right? Tonight, his second goal was like a David Perron style toe drag into a wrister and just beats Shesterkin
Where'd that come
clean
from?
glove side. Like, dude. And if I remember talking about it on the podcast a while ago, but if you haven't listened to the episode of Missing Curfew, which is the Scotty Upshaw podcast, they do a great job over there. They interviewed Jordan Binnington. They asked him, like, who is the most difficult shots to stop in practice. And obviously he said Vladimir Tarasenko, but some of the other names that he mentioned were Jordan Kyrou as well as Robert Thomas. So if that tells you anything of the shot that Robert Thomas is capable of, and he's been hiding it up to this point, but I think we really do have a fully capable playmaker as well as a goal scorer in Robert Thomas, especially beating guys off the rush. I mean, we've seen flashes of what he's able to do, puck handling and beating guys with like one-on-one moves. Jordan Kyrou obviously does it a lot more often and tries it a lot more often than Robert Thomas does, but I don't think Robert Thomas' ability either. So putting the weight of the shoulders on those two moving forward to kind of be the new face of this team feels like a tall task right now just because they're so young. But I think when you take into consideration the skill set that they have and the experience that they have, the chemistry that they have, I mean, these guys are going to be absolute bombshells for this team for years to come. And I'm so excited. It feels like every game they develop something else. And like, even just this game, like watching Rob rip that wrister past, like you said, the Vezina probable winner and a Hart Trophy candidate. I mean, it just speaks dividends to like this guy's work ethic and what he brings to a hockey team. So I'm so excited to watch the development of these guys because it seems like they take massive steps forward in every game that they play.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about this before the podcast, and it's an interesting point. You mentioned Jordan Kyrou, and you said something that kind of like made me laugh a little bit. Like, you're like, Jordan Kyrou, who's this? And he's still not even playing well. And like, I think you're right. You know, this isn't to bash on Jordan Kyrou, but just in terms of what he was doing earlier in the season and the play that he had, and just how consistent he was. I definitely think he's not where he wants to be right now. He's still playing a little poorly. Gripping the stick a little too tight. You've heard all the cliches here, time and time again. But the thing is, you know, we saw this out of him last season too. We saw him, you know, reach a
Just
wall.
more turnovers from what I've noticed.
Yeah, more turnovers, a little looser with the puck. And we saw this last year, except last year when he started struggling and started turning the puck over a little bit more, the points disappeared too. The fact that Jordan Kyrou is playing evidently poor hockey right now by his standards and still putting up multi-point games left and right.
Like, that's insane.
It shows you what you got in a player like him. You know, when even on his off nights, quote unquote, he's still putting up points and therefore still getting that ice time. I think that was one of the biggest problems last year is once Jordan Kyrou started going cold, you know, his ice time took a huge dip, getting around like 10 minutes a night just because he was frankly a liability out there. And as much, you know, when he was turning the puck over and the offense wasn't coming, there really wasn't an argument to have him out on the ice all that much. Now you can sort of say, yeah, okay, maybe he's going to have a rough turnover a couple times a game while he's rusty, but he'll put the puck in the net or he'll make some tape-to-tape passes that'll end up in goals. So it just gets me excited for when he starts, you know, finding his game again 100% and when he's really, you know, firing on all cylinders, because I think he'll get back to that point because, you know, he has the ice time. He'll figure it out eventually. I can't wait to see where that takes his game once he gets, you know, back up to full confidence. It's going to be really exciting to see. In the third segment here, I want to talk about some more individual performances, and I want to basically spend the whole time, Tommy, I hope this is cool with you because we were talking about it before the pod, talking about the defense.
Yes.
You know, we changed up the defensive pairings for like the first time in eons, it felt like. You know, kept the crew
two
and
big
Falk
ones on my
together,
mind that I want to bring up.
Yeah, kept the crew and Falk pairing together. You know, they've been working all season, but finally broke up that Parayko-Mikkola pairing that evidently was weighing each one of them down because both of them had really strong games tonight. Jake Wallman as the 7th guy played that role perfectly. Lots to talk about in this third segment regarding the defense. Make sure you stay tuned. All right, Tommy. You said you had 2 big points about the defense. I won't even try to, lead into anything or guess. Just take it away. What's your first one? Hit me.
So my first one was I talked earlier in this podcast and said that I thought that Robert Thomas led the team in shots, and he did not, Josh.
Oh.
The player who led the team in shots was Justin Falk with 5. Robert Thomas had 4.
Hit the post too.
Yeah, he hit the post and probably could have had.
You hear that
probably
post
2
shot
or 3
was
goals in the night.
101 miles per hour. They said on the broadcast.
Guy's nasty. I'm telling you, dude. He brings it in every single zone. I think that's huge for this team. He's been a pillar of consistency for this team all season long. So I think the last time we did a duo pod together, I picked him as my locked on player of the game. And I'm not going to count this as that, but he had a great game, right? So it's something you love to see from a guy that who you consistently depend on. Nico Mikkola had a fight. I feel like he held it down defensively, and I feel like obviously you love seeing the guy develop and being so young and putting him on the first pairing. That's a tall task of anybody, especially next to a guy like Colton Parayko, who I feel like excels more when he's able to rely heavily on his defensive pairing. I feel like that's kind of taken a toll on Mikkola, and maybe the pressure got to him because of the past couple of games when he was on that top pairing. Didn't feel like he was playing his best hockey. But when he's getting in the kitchen of other guys enough and to make them mad enough to drop the gloves, I think that's when he's playing his best. He's laying down the body. He's shutting it down defensively. I think he is an above average. I'd even go as far as saying a solid third pairing defenseman by every account in the NHL. Just makes me a little bit shifty when he's on that first pairing. So I'm going to segue that into my next point and saying that Jacob Chychrun, bringing him in, can move Mikkola down to that third pairing, maybe have Scandella and him split time based on a matchup or whatever you want to do. But I think if you're Colton Parayko, would you rather rely on a defensive pairing of Jacob Chychrun or Nico Mikkola? And would you rather put faith in which one of those would you put faith in to carry the weight of however much Colton Parayko needs you to carry?
Yeah, man, that episode, if and when we have it, Jacob Chychrun traded to the St. Louis Blues. That is going to be a fun one. We've been teasing that for seems like months now.
He's got 4 goals in his last 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, might I even say that Marco Scandella had one of his most solid games of the season.
He played well too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
we always say that often on this podcast.
No, I always say on this podcast, besides the times that we have segments like this where we just purposely go out of our way to highlight the defenseman, the only time that defensemen get their names mentioned on this podcast usually is when they're playing poorly, just because that's how that position works in hockey, unless you're a Cale Makar type or a little bit of like a Torrey Krug, sometimes Justin Falk type. The better you play, the less you're noticed as a defenseman, because you're just making the right play, poke checking the puck, being in the right position, keeping guys out of, and then if you're getting blown past or turning the puck over, that's when you're like, oh wait, who was that? Oh, Scandella. Or that's when those names come up. And I feel like every single time we brought up Marco Scandella's name this season has been for that. He's been playing poorly. And for the first time, I think we can bring up his name and be like, he had a pretty good game, and enough so where I feel like that he deserves a little bit of a shout out because we've definitely been very critical of him this season. He's the new Zach Sanford. We knew there'd be one, and it's turned into him, and maybe deservedly so, maybe not. But maybe these new line pairings, the original duo of Parayko and Scandella, the thing that got him his extension here and got so many Blues fans kind of excited at the prospect of having him around. Maybe that pairing is sort of reignited. And then the same thing, like you said, Mikkola on that third pairing kind of reignited him too, play with a little bit more of an edge. And then Jake Wallman as that 7th defenseman role, I think played it perfectly. Was just that extra spark whenever the Blues needed to rest a guy or change things up a little bit. He even had a goal on one of the prettiest stretches of offense the Blues have had all season. They scored
the delayed penalty.
Off a delayed penalty. I go to rewatch the highlight, and I'm sitting there staring at my phone.
It's 2 minutes long.
Sitting there staring at my phone for 2 minutes, being like, all right, when's the goal going to happen? Because the Blues just pass the puck, behind the net, cycle, and they cycle so much. Georgiev got dizzy and fell over, and Wallman just put it into the empty net. I mean, I'm stoked, man. As much as like I said, I'm not fully bought in yet. It's not like they just went out and the offense won them this game and the defense kind of just got to sit back and relax. The Rangers put on a lot of pressure at times. The defense stood tall, and you know what they say: the best defense or the best offense is a good defense. And I think one of the few times this season the defense turned into offense enough to get the Blues the win.
I will say this though, I do think obviously that the offense led the way for the success in this game, and I do think because the score was 6-2, we're kind of looking at this through rose-colored lenses, right? Because it was a good game for the defense, but all things considered, like Ville Husso played out of his mind. And if Ville Husso didn't play out of his mind, then there's a very possible and possibly probable chance that game is like 6-5 with the amount of saves that Ville Husso made that he had no business saving. So I think if this was a 6-5 win, we've got a much different tone. And I don't think that's because the defense played terrible. I think they played like to their capabilities, but it still kind of re-solidifies the idea in my mind that this team still needs to add defensively at the deadline to truly compete with these teams. Because there's not like Ville Husso played a great game and like by all accounts should have been like probably second star of the game behind Robert Thomas. Like the dude was like no look, like blocker saves just out of his mind. That one kick save he had when he was sliding the other way was just unbelievable. And this dude's like realistically though, like you can't expect him to have that kind of performance every night, especially in the playoffs when it's like games every other night and guys are getting wary and getting worn down and all those things. So if he doesn't have a game like that, then the defense has to step it up. And I think to do that with this Blues team right now, you got to add somebody.
Yeah. Oh no, I definitely agree. And I mean, I guess the bar is set so low that I agree with everything you said, even though it sounded like I was like praising the crap out of the defense. You're totally right. They played up to their capability. They played okay. I just feel like we're so used to watching this defense just leave goalies out, Whittington,
especially the last four. They played way better than the last four.
Yeah. So like, the bar is set so low that they just had to kind of do a little tippy toe over it. We're like, oh, defense. They didn't look like traffic cones out there. Woohoo! So I think you're right, but I don't know, man. Glass cannon. The glass has been hot glue gunned back together. And the cannon's still going, still pushing it along.
I will say this: I don't think I'll ever doubt the offense on this team because
exactly.
Way they look tonight.
Let's hope that
never go quiet again.
Hey, like I said, this gonna be the buzzword for the rest of the season. The glass cannon.
Hope. I like that
because I think it's perfect. And you know what? It stayed strong for the first 45 games of the season, shattered for the last 4, and then like I said, a little bit of duct tape, Elmer's glue here and there.
Good to go.
Back together. Let's see if we can just give it a push over the finish line. Yeah. Who knows? Like I said, winning a Stanley Cup. Or I don't know if I want to go that far.
That is a good analogy though, because it's like, okay, so let's think of this as like in like biblical and like historical terms, right? Let's take like the Trojan horse, right? So let's replace the Trojan horse with the glass cannon.
Curious where you
right? And so we're wheeling it in, and we're like, oh, like, maybe it's not a gift per se, but like they're gonna let us in the castle because like it's a glass cannon and they're like expecting it, right? They don't really fully realize on the surface that it's duct taped together and Mod Podged and all of these things. So as long as we just, keep pushing it in and like,
right. And they're looking at it. They're laughing. They're going, oh, look at this crappy cannon. All of a sudden you light the fuse and boom, 6-2 New York against the New York Rangers. Igor Shesterkin, you're gone.
Exactly. And if you don't hit any of those bumps or potholes or anything like that, the whole thing's not going to shatter and fall apart. And then you're standing there like, what do I do now? No armor, no protection against an entire castle that's trying to kill you.
Yeah, I mean, winning a Stanley Cup, going deep in the playoffs is all about getting hot at the right time. And the Blues are a really, really good team when they're hot. They're also a pretty poor team when they're cold. So Who knows if the Blues can have, like, for example, the first 15 games of the season, they were on fire. You're on fire for 15 straight playoff games. You're in the third round. Who knows? Who knows what could happen?
With Chychrun on fire like he is right now,
Speak it into
Josh.
existence.
With Chychrun on fire like he is right now, if the Blues go out and acquire him, how drastically do you think their Stanley Cup odds increase?
I think you take the glass out of the cannon and you put a layer of like steel and titanium over it. It becomes. I really truly think that a true number one defenseman would make this team night and day different, because
I don't even know. And here's the thing too, like I don't even know if Chychrun or Parayko are a number one defenseman, right? Because like Chychrun's so young and he's like had a crazy productive year last year, and this year he's kind of tapered off. Parayko had a crazy productive 2019, and then he's kind of tapered off. But I think the two together, you don't need one guy that's just above the pack, because that pairing is so good.
Yep. And like we talked about with, like, Mikkola having a bit of a lesser role, kind of improved this game. You bring in a guy like Jakob Chychrun or just any defenseman, and it just takes some of the weight off of everyone else, which makes them play better. It could be a huge game changer. I'm looking forward to seeing if it is here on the Locked On Blues podcast, but that is all the time we have for you guys today. I want to thank everyone so much for listening or watching. If you're on YouTube,
tell your friends.
Yeah, tell your friends. Make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. Leave a review if you're feeling so kind. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Leave a comment. We try to interact with all the comments. We have a lot of fun doing it. Follow us on all of our socials at Locked On Blues on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Hyman NHL. Follow Tommy at TWelcher15. Thanks so much for listening. And as always, let's go Blues.